It's really hard to follow from Mr. Yogendra Yadav, but I'll try my best. And thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'll be fairly candid with you. I got to know about Mr. Balagopal after an invitation was sent to me last year, which I could not attend. Then I went on the website, acquainted myself with his writings, and the more I read, the more I saw certain reflections of a desire, a certain urgency for social change, which is there in many of us when we work, when we write, when we hold the pen, when we type in our keyboard. It's in our op-eds, it's when we connect with people, it's when we come to events like this on a Sunday, ignoring that geyser which needs to be fixed back home. So let me start by a t-shirt which I saw one of the young volunteers here wear. He said, make Orwell fiction again, and this also picks up somewhat from a certain annual event of pop culture in which young people rediscover that Orwell was actually born in Bihar, right? So there's many people are acquainted with Orwell's works of fiction, 1984, Animal Farm, Keep the Strata Flying, etc., or even his non-fiction work. And there is a very prescient comparison between Orwell's work, his conception of a totalitarian society in which there's a centralized authority which pushes down on you through technocratic methods, who controls and invades every part of your life, and is then contrasted with Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And this is done very beautifully in one paragraph by Neil Postman in his book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. Neil Postman at that time was writing basically about how television programming, how news broadcasts were turning into what we see today, even in India, for instance on Republic DD, though I don't know what's happening there because I've not looked at it for a few years now. So what did Neil Postman say? Neil Postman said that there is a vision of a totalitarian state which many people know, because arguably more people have read 1984, more people have read about Orwell and his work. It's been more popular. I've read it first. And less people have read about Huxley. What happens in Brave New World is that you're constantly given every pleasure which you want. You're given a drug called Soma, which keeps you completely satisfied. All your desires, wants, pleasures are met. And that stunts your critical thinking and your ability to ask or even examine your own condition for what it is. It seems much more recently, the more we engage with technology and the more which AI spreads in our life, and we hear so much about AI, we read so much about AI, it's impossible today to pick up a newspaper and read it cover to cover and there's no mention of artificial intelligence within it. A physical newspaper. Why? AI is supposed to be the new panacea. It is supposed to provide for every solution which is plaguing us today. However, I want to show through this brief address the problems it's already causing when it integrates into public systems. And what I mean by public systems, for instance, people here in Telangana know very well that there has been a technocratic focus of development for decades. It predates the current chief minister and his administration to the one before him, and even when this was a united state which was governed by Chandrababu Naidu. This is in fact written by Balagopal ji in his book Leaders Beyond Images, which is kept outside, so you may want to pick that up. And what comes through this is that this technocratic vision, which started out with PowerPoint presentations today, aims to give us solutions which may not solve our problems but create new ones. So let me look at artificial intelligence as privacy, and privacy as articulated by the Supreme Court as a form of human dignity, as a form of human autonomy, as a form of human liberty. And what I mean by this is when artificial intelligence through facial recognition technologies in which our faces are matched against a machine to authenticate and identify us are used, what does it mean? The first and the biggest instance of that is authentication, which is now being implemented increasingly in the public distribution system. And why does this matter? Let's take a step back. Let's imagine how does this technology work. Many of us has face unlocks on our phone, right? It's there for many of us. It's much more convenient than remembering a passcode, right? But what happens when your phone does not unlock is very different from what happens when a person does not gain ration. And also your phone's technology systems are very different from what are there at the PDS shop or what is there at a Anganwadi center. The consequences are very different. But this is being done increasingly, and it is being done without any transparency, without any audit, without any RTI disclosure. Who are getting these contracts? How is it being developed? How many times the survey is down? How much time a person has to wait, etc., etc. This is a purely technocratic vision which envisions the most abled, a person like me, going to a ration shop and asking for their rations, and in case I don't get my rations, the ability to raise an appeal, which is a ticket, because everything is a ticket now, you get a ticket. You raise a ticket in case you don't get your rations, but you go hungry. So let me bring this to an actual implementation which has happened recently. On June 30th, there's a Poshan Tracker app which is there for Anganwadi centers, in which facial recognition was optional. And facial recognition, I would like to emphasize again, is a form of artificial intelligence technology. It matches one person's face against a pre-existing scan, not only on the basis of that face being there itself, but also the lightness, the contrast, the tolerance level, and what they now call the liveness check, to make sure nobody is carrying a printout of that face and placing it before the camera. But before, the Poshan tracking app required a person who was receiving this ration through a facial recognition scan on June 30th, right before it went live, it also required a OTP, a one-time password, which was linked to a person's Aadhaar. Now imagine who works in a Anganwadi and who takes benefit of a Anganwadi. Now imagine who owns a smartphone and where does that OTP go? Isn't there a gender gap there? Aren't there more men with cell phones in a certain social strata who share with their spouses? And the Aadhaar invariably will send the OTP to the husband who's working a job somewhere else or needs to accompany that woman there at that point in time. Who's thinking of these things? These people are supposed to be brilliant engineers. We need to question their hubris. We need to question the phrase technocrat, for it means an unquestioning ability to deliver on social good. It is not. Experience is showing it is not. Now, on July 1st, the facial recognition system goes live. After OTP, you cannot now skip the facial recognition system. And here failures are immediately noticed. There are protests which take place. There is statement by the National Federation of Anganwadi Workers. At my part, at IFF, we file a RTI. Somehow we get a sheaf of papers. I think the papers are fairly self-serving because they do not give the tender details, the tender contract details, the audit reports, but they do state they were pilots before it was rolled out. So they do hold meaning, but an incomplete one, and we have filed a first appeal to get more information on it. Now the issue with welfare and its automation through artificial intelligence presents multifold problems because it undermines a legal guarantee which is sometimes there in the law as well. If you look at the National Food Security Act, it is not requiring these layers of authentication, OTP, facial recognition, liveness check. And then your safeguards and remedy is so weak, so absent, it must make us question that the entire system may be designed for exclusion, especially if there is an inherent incentive to make sure that there are leakages which are checked. There are people who are getting rations who should not get them. That there is money which can be saved by a state which no longer wants to be a welfare state. Now let me come to the second phase of artificial intelligence technology by facial recognition, which is surveillance and policing. This second phase may be a little much more well known, if not visible to people here in this city. In fact, for years, we have informed ourselves and learned from the policing practices in Hyderabad, which have been implemented in other cities as well. But I bring a tale from Delhi. When there was a visit by President Trump in his earlier term, there was in a certain part of Delhi violence which was taking place between communities. Subsequent to that, the people who were identified and arrested were only from that minority community disproportionately. And the Home Minister of this country, Mr. Amit Shah, is on record saying that they use the photographs of people from drivers' identity databases, vehicular databases, other identification databases, and matched it against CCTV video cameras footage. Any normal, regular person will say, well, this is a good idea. There is less police, there are more people. And of course, this is technology. Technology will be impartial. It will catch the people who are doing a crime, right? And this is what the Home Minister says in Parliament. This is technology, it does not have biases. Facial recognition technology has a bias. It is based on the training data. And secondly, it is then based on who it is applied on. Firstly, where was those CCTV first installed? Secondly, which footage was analyzed? Third, what was the level of analysis? Because if you look at the eventual judgments from the High Court which are coming on bail from those 2020 instances, order after order is saying that there is a form of digital theatre which has been played by the police, where they have taken these CCTV images, matched it through this AI tool, and caught a person wearing a black t-shirt who was there in a crowd breaking something or causing violence, who was in a black t-shirt, but that's a different person. The facial recognition is not accurate. And even if it is accurate, is mere presence by itself a form of crime? It may seem so if that person's name is not Apar and maybe Abdul. At least that person will face a higher degree of burden to establish their innocence. And let us acknowledge it, especially when it is weighed against a prevalent social mode in which artificial intelligence is supposed to be a panacea. It is supposed to be impartial. And here work by several scholars, which is already there, on how pseudoscience such as narco-analysis and lie detectors have been used for years, decades, to influence criminal trials becomes relevant. I can speak more on artificial intelligence, but I will respect the title which I have been given today. I am particularly concerned, as much as I do see utility in the use of artificial intelligence and I do use it in my work, in terms of which sections of our society will be able to use it, will be able to be skilled in it, the impact of it on our education system, on our cognitive abilities, because artificial intelligence has been shown to dull our mind. For instance, recent studies are showing from the House of Commons certain phrases which are repeating and spiking in usage by even members of parliament abroad. And if we run that same analysis, we will notice that M dashes have started appearing more and more and more and more. Why? A certain form of writing in which if I ask anybody, how will you plan something? There is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. I know somebody is using AI, and then the problem with that is it's not only homogenized thought. It is dulling your own mind. I'm also really concerned about AI's impact in terms of jobs. Because if you look at it, there are different types of technology. Some are labor augmenting, some are labor replacing. And each technology, how it's been assimilated by society has been different. People like to say, don't be a Luddite. The Luddites were actually middle-aged men who were semi-skilled artisans who were close to 1 million in number and lost their way of life. In their place, young children were employed in factories, which resulted in a host of legislations such as minimum pay, the Factories and Boilers Act, etc. So these labor legislations, at least in England, owe their origin to abuse through industrialization rather than through some grave learning. So when people say don't be a Luddite, it is not as if Luddites were fighting for something which was unreasonable or they were rioting or engaging in violence without reason. Yes, the total gains through industrialization over a larger spread of time may have been beneficial. But for the short run of time, a Luddite's life was entirely of unemployment. So we need to realize these things. How will AI impact our skilling, our jobs? That's important. But I think so, our fascination with AI and the mainstream discourse of it can be categorized much better by our Prime Minister. Right before the 2024 elections, there is a comical video which is almost seeming like a campaign video of him sitting with Bill Gates. And I remember our Prime Minister saying that when a child is born, the first words he says is I, which in Hindi may mean that mother, and some other languages as well. And Bill Gates tries to laugh. I think so. But I don't know if there's translation or not. It makes me think again to an Orwellian frame of reference. The Orwellian reference to the state was Big Brother. Undoubtedly, our state, who is also referred to as Bharat Mata, a mother can be caring, nurturing, but can also be an authoritarian and disciplinarian. So are we working with AI, technology, and the kind of digital public infrastructure, the kind of solutions which we are being offered again and again to a system which is of precarity, exclusion, control, ultimately authoritarianism? I leave you with those thoughts. Thank you so much.
You have a lot of time for Q&A for Apar, so came to listen to him. Please go ahead. We'll have a question and answer session now. Raise your hand.
Thank you for giving the overview about like facial recognition apps like which are introduced into our government systems. So, and I want to talk about like the nano banana which is introduced recent times and everyone using their to create images and nano banana using them, and so people are not much aware about like with that data what the companies will do. So can you elaborate or can you give the idea about like what this will do to a personal privacy to most of them?
Yeah, if they have one there, one there.
Yeah. Can you see me?
Yeah, of course.
Hi, my name is Geeta. So, one that I was having is, I felt there wasn't a lot of depth in what you were sharing. So, I was wondering if you chose not to go into depth because of time or any other reason. That's just a wonder, you don't have to share your response. But the next question is, I want to understand AI in terms of ethics. Because there's been a lot of, AI does steal a lot of people's work, images, anything that's there on the internet, right? So I want your opinion on if you think AI is ethical or unethical right now. Yeah.
Mr. Gupta, Einstein once said the ultimate fatality that mankind can face is being ruled by technology. Being ruled by technology. Do you think AI has the potential to disturb and to ruin from human sectors? And do you think that AI has to be consciously excluded from some productive or service sectors like humanity to save its own role and its own historical destiny?
Hi, Apar. So, I think everything was about AI. So, at the last, kindly just add on personal level like what an individual can do, such as like installing WhatsApp, Meta, all the apps related to Meta and everything, and move away to free software apps, so that like on a personal level, like it will be a very good thing, so that it will not be under any surveillance and everything. Yeah. Kindly add some 5 to 10 points seriously, and because like we talk about all television and everything, but you know, so but uninstalling WhatsApp will be a big thing for each individual. So please stress on it.
Right. My question to you is, a lot of us here are engaged with the social sector, and I want to know specifically how AI, I mean at this point I'm not willing to believe that it has no uses. So I want to know specifically where can we actually benefit by the use of AI and where we have to be cautionary. Is there anything that we can work on?
Firstly, with regard to I leave it to people how to use tools and artificial intelligence for their own personal use up to their own judgment. I'm not a person who can prescribe what you should do, what you should not do. There are guides, technical guides which are there, which are existing, and you may want to refer to it. However, what has to be understood is that when you're interacting with any AI-based system, most of us are engaging with a large language model which is over a period of time also using the inputs which we make within it as training data to further correct itself. So there is of course a need for us not to enter complete conversations which we are having, which may be privileged for lawyers, for instance, right? And there's also the threat of the artificial intelligence platform hallucinating. So these are things which one needs to be mindful. How one uses these tools is up to us. However, what has been the focus of my inquiry and concern has been its use in the public sector, for it as an authentication measure which acts as a barrier towards inclusion for people, as to its ability to be used as an objective frame of reference in any evidentiary process that is used to prosecute an individual in a criminal case. And that is where I think there is a greater importance for us to be concerned and critical of AI, the use of AI in the public sector. If one goes to any tendering website which is there, for instance the government e-marketplace GEM which is there for the union government, and puts in artificial intelligence, one will see artificial intelligence tenders there for hundreds of crores for different kinds of things which were being done by others over a period of time. For instance, automation tasks, data entry tasks, etc. And this does cause a problem over a period of time. Now, In terms of my lack of depth, I'm sorry to disappoint you. You can look up my work. I'm only trying to do what I can do best. So there's no intention by me to be this shallow. This is who I am. Yeah, this is who I am. And coming to our recourse to AI in terms of where it may reach, where it may not reach. See, I don't know whether we will as a race become subservient to it or not. But what I do know is that beyond the hype bubble, a lot of people say that this is a hype, right? And it will die down. It is a foundational technology. There is real practical utility which is already coming through it. And to a certain degree, its accuracy and sophistication over a period of time will improve. Its integration will improve. In fact, I was sitting with Amandeep Singh Gill, who is the special envoy from the UN on artificial intelligence. And he says, irrespective of how bad or good the technology is, given the amount of strategic investment which is being made, geopolitical interest which is there, server capacity which is being built, it is undoubtable that there will be frameworks of power as well as commerce which will be premised on it. So we cannot ignore it. But there are very big questions how much we as human beings will begin to rely on it. In fact, there are studies which are already showing that people are, at least abroad, they have started resorting to artificial intelligence chatbots as companions, and thereafter are suffering mental illnesses. So again, what I do think we need to be concerned about is that when we think about AI as a technology, we think about large language models, ChatGPT, Claude. What we are not thinking about is a broader spread of technology, which is pattern recognition. Essentially, there's a huge amount of data which is just thrown in, and the machine is taught what are the loops of logic, and then it guesses after this word in 300 books, the next word which came was this. Hence, this is the word which follows after this word. It is a bright sunny day is a sentence which is used often. Hence, I will use bright and sunny and day together. It does not know the rules of grammar. It does not know the rule whether it is actually a bright sunny day. It needs to be treated and told that through a process of labeling and instruction, and that cannot be done. So more or less, what we need to be really concerned about today is that as an experimental technology, how in basic entitlements and welfare systems it is being integrated. Secondly, why is it being used more and more in policing systems, given that technology-based policing systems act very differently and have very grave consequences for people, even when they're identified for not committing a crime, for being part of a protest.
Hello, Mr. Gupta. I understand this is a technology, but already we have experience that Pegasus technology is bought by Indian government, BJP from Israel, and those people are languishing there because they also created witnesses with that. We feel, as human rights activists, we feel that this is an arm. The government uses it as very weapon, powerful weapon on people like us, people like and everyone. So I think it is very harmful to social activity. You say it's social welfareism, but I don't agree. It is harmful to society. That's my argument.
Any more questions or? Yeah. Rohit, one more question. And also I have Like is coming just before that I have one question for Apar. I read about a theory that AI is overhyped and the technology and AI technology is overhyped, and also Nvidia, the company which makes the GPU chips, which is behind the technology, that is making a lot of money, and also that is investing in all the other AI companies, whether it is Gemini or Microsoft and all. And there is a theory that we are not really, nobody is really making any money out of it yet, but they are pumping billions of dollars into it. So why is it so? I don't understand it. So maybe can you explain?
Somebody can go on government e-marketplace and type artificial intelligence and they can get to know why. There may not be enough money for profitability right now, but it is a race to make sure that you have the technical infrastructure, because it is a computer intensive task to run a model, at least till now. Models will become more efficient in terms of the demand on computing infrastructure, but at present to even create a model you do need a lot of computing facility, which is called compute. NVIDIA is the company which does make that. And yes, you are right, there is a concentration of capital between old big tech and certain new players which is there, which is why there is a very real risk of there being a perpetuation of this big tech platform for sort of market dynamics again coming through this. And there are really good books on this. There's a great book called AI Wars on how US and China are building their own models and computing facility, and this has been happening for years. But you're right, people are yet not making money off it, but that is, the hope is it will change.
Apar, yeah, one question I have is AI needs to be looked at from a human rights point of view, as a public policy. In the context of public policy, most of the AI systems are predictive AI systems that are trained by human training. So all the social biases that are built in, be it healthcare, be it education, be it legal phenomena, are being ported into an automated system. And hence you are basically porting whatever the social biases exist today into the system and without any accountability. So where do you make, in this sense, both the government or even the private companies are not only owning the data, they are also inbuilding the whole biases into the system. So in that context, as a human rights activist, you would be looking at, hey, where do we need to counter-argue? Like it's more than a technology. It needs to be looked at as a mechanism to imposing a perspective without accountability. So where do you stand on that?
So if you look at the first few blogs which were done by OpenAI before it released ChatGPT even to the public, it was saying how it was building its model, and it said that it's primarily crawled and built from training data on the internet, which is English language based. So if the English language recognizes a certain value in society as being positive or normatively being negative, that is how it would be reflected. For instance, if it be trained only on Vedic texts, such as Bhagavad Gita, then its understanding of the caste-based system would be a system of social utility and segregation rather than deep discrimination and rights violation as to what it actually is. So, here, after you train the model, right, what is it used for? What is its sensitivity and risk? And finally, there is a method in which you can change the weights in a model, label data differently, but then who does it? Who exercises that judgment? Who says that this is wrong and this is right? Which is why a lot of people say that there is a left bias, because there's a perceived left bias in any of these models, or then people say no, the model is then reflecting a certain form of thinking, etc. And to change that is to change its value and training to suit a progressive or left agenda by itself, or to make it politically correct. So I do not know where do I stand on it, but I do agree there needs to be transparency in these systems. And when I say transparency in these systems, I don't mean as a policy document, I mean the RTI Act should be made applicable to public systems in the way that we need to know what are the audit reports, how is the tendering process done, what is the actual model, is it a reseller, etc. What are the complaints which are coming up, etc. and what's the testing process. Thank you so much. Thank you.